All right, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and welcome to the Friday Masterclass here on Adobe Live, Behance, YouTube, and Twitter Periscope. Twitter, not Periscope anymore. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining me. Today's Masterclass is Ask Me Anything. So over the last couple of weeks, there are always just too many questions to answer during the stream, so I thought today would be a good opportunity to do that. And I even picked a few from Twitter and from YouTube and a couple of places where they came at the end of the stream or in the last few days where I just wasn't able to answer them all. So we're going to do that today. You can bring any kinds of questions, audio, video, whatever. We can even talk about the Beatles' Get Back if you're so inclined. And that's what we're here for to do today. So happy Friday, everyone. As always, we are coming to you live on a host of different networks. If you want me to follow the live chat, this is the one that I'll be reading, b.net/Adobe Live. So that's the one that's right in front of me here. I can see all of your questions, though, so as you're bringing them in, I'll be able to do that. And as always, we thank you so much for watching here. So much great content going into the weekend. So you've got Reverb Mike, Cody Bear, how you doing? Mustafa, William Polk, Tim, Jurgen, Theo, Gia, Biola, Umakorn, great to see you. All right, and we've got Haji here, Salid, My Fantasy Kingdom, and Suraj. Great to see you all. Okay, so we're going to start today in Premiere, and this was actually a question that came from Salid just before the stream around grading iPhone 13 footage, which we showed at the very end of the stream last week. Oh, and also, just to clarify something, let me switch over to Premiere in the meantime as well. Now, you may recall that last week I was showing all of the various, well, many of the various stock options, Adobe Stock options, native to Premiere Pro. And at the end of the stream, talked about how to become a contributor. And I went to go do this workflow via Media Encoder, right, where I showed you a method that I've used a lot in the past. Now, I haven't uploaded anything there in a while, so I kept trying to log in to Adobe Stock here, and I was getting a weird error, and it wouldn't let me do it, right? And I was getting very frustrated. Well, as it turns out, this is currently broken. So basically, some things have changed in the back end with Stock and uploading and whatnot. Long story short, we're going to be revamping this. I don't have an ETA for you. I love when I can just find these things live on stream. But that's why we do them live, to find them live and then report them in. So if you're going to do that, the key is just go to stock.adobe.com, go to your contributor portal, and you can upload directly from there, just as you would do elsewhere. I apologize that this is in here because obviously it's a little deceptive. If you wanted to attempt that previous method that I showed you, which was awesome. Here's the good news. Even if you upload directly via stock.adobe.com, it still uses Sensei to automatically keyword and tag your content anyway. So that, for me, and we didn't really get into it because it wasn't working, that's sort of the best part. When you upload media, you remember I showed you all the various keywords that it automatically created based on analyzing the type of video. Again, there's a lot of AI that's going on there where it's looking at your video and comparing the scene to other videos in Adobe Stock. And then from that, it pulls all these various keywords, and sometimes it just gets it right on the nose, as we saw with one of those San Francisco downtown shots. Very, very cool. You still have the benefit of Sensei doing all that work for you. So really, it's about titling, checking that if you have a model release, if there are people in there that you shot intentionally for the video, you have to have the ability to upload those model releases. Give it a title. What do you want to call it? You can add additional keywords if you so desire, and that's basically it. You're done. And then once you click submit or whatever the button is, then it goes off to not only AI but actual humans in the case of video to just look through your content and to make sure that it's suitable for monetization. A couple of things to keep in mind. If your content is blurry or momentarily out of focus but kind of at the right moment, or it's just completely blown out or too dark, it may get rejected. I've had dozens of pieces of footage rejected for one reason or another, so don't get discouraged. But again, the nice thing is you can just submit tons of content and just see what happens. It's really wonderful. All right. Michael Wheeler from New Zealand, how are you doing? Nice to see you. Okay. Very cool. All right, so color grading, iPhone 13. So I've been shooting more and more with this camera. This is truly amazing. The more I use it, the more I just keep thinking it really potentially could be just the last sort of, well, the last camera that I really need in my camera arsenal. You know, I'm a Nikon person, so I have all Nikon gear and lenses. And for 4K, I've been shooting with the D850 video. This is now another 4K edition, but now that this does ProRes 422 HQ, Rec 2100 HDR, I mean, yeah. Now, someone asked me too on the stream. They were like, "Oh, what about the cinematic mode?" So at present, we do not support the editing of the rack focus in Premiere. I'm sure that will be coming. It's not in there yet. So when you create, if you're using cinematic mode on the iPhone 13, you know, where you can tap to adjust the rack focus and it does it really beautifully, that's baked into the file, not changeable once you bring it into Premiere. Hopefully we'll see that change soon. So that was another question that came. Okay, so here we have a couple of those clips from last week. And, oh, that one's already been treated. Whoops. And as I mentioned, what's so cool when I shot this stuff is, again, I was just outside in my backyard here, super sunny, bright day. See the sun kind of just poking through there. And I hadn't even really attempted any color stuff with it at all. I really wasn't thinking about that. I just sort of picked up the camera and started shooting. And actually, this one is even a better place to start. So, you know, first, as we've discussed before, if we go into our Lumetri scopes, again, now that they are recognizing, because we have all these different color spaces that we can work in, it identifies this content from the iPhone 13 as Rec 2100 HLG. You can see that we've got over 1,000 nits of brightness here, so we're in an HDR scale. Obviously, you've got other, you know, multiple options here for how you're viewing that content, as we mentioned, which is wonderful. But I'm looking at this and going, oh, wow, this is totally blown out. And, you know, working with MP4s for so long, I've just gotten really used to, in camera, being very, very careful about exposure, obviously, because if you have a situation like this, right, with an MP4, chances are that data is just gone. And this was something that, you know, with the DSLR boom of from 12, 13 years ago, I remember Philip Bloom, who was really sort of the godfather of the DSLR boom, super intelligent guy, really taught me how to shoot video with DSLR. I credit him with that. And I remember him talking about this back in the day when, of course, there was no HDR at that time, and saying, look, you know, you've got a camera with a sensor shooting 420 8-bit. You know, what's wonderful in Premiere is we're always working in 32-bit, so you can grade, it gives you a little more latitude, but you can't prevent what happened at the sensor, right? So if you shot it and it was overexposed and blown out, you're just not going to be able to recover that with a compressed file format at 420 8-bit. Not going to happen. Well, cut to ProRes 422 content, HDR content, that all changes. And the way that you do that is just by using the Lumetri color panel. And of course, different ways to achieve what you're trying to do here. But let's just start by first coming into the white slider here and start pulling this down. Now again, we can adjust this after the fact, but I'm just trying to show you, you'll see that each of these sliders does something a little bit different. So if I pull this all the way down, all right away, you're noticing that we suddenly have all this detail in the trees. Whoa, there's actually a bit of blue sky. Oh, I even see color differentiation on the roof and the edging of the house here. Again, there's just a lot of other detail that just appeared just by dropping that one slider. Now take that a step further, adjust the exposure. We're bringing back even more. Again, we can kind of tamp down the highlights. Maybe now we increase the white level here. All right, and then we can really start to grade and do whatever it is that we like to this, because now all the detail's been preserved. And it's amazing. And if you look sort of before, just completely gone, after, I mean, it's pretty shocking. Now, I'm running this on my old school iMac here. Oh yeah, this is so great right here. Look at that. This house is it's just gone, and this whole sky area is just completely gone. Turn back on what we did, and it's all there. And what I love about this is not only are we capturing the reflections of the trees in the window, and you're seeing the reflection of the blue sky. And again, obviously, in this case, it's a little more blown out here because we're basically shooting into the sun. But there's so much detail and color definition. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised by it, but I'm surprised by it because this is on a phone, right? And as my buddy Brian O'Neill Hughes talked about, so here's another example of this. All right, do the same thing here. Let's drop the exposure a little. All right, maybe pull down our highlights. One of the things you'll notice with this iPhone 13, particularly if you are sort of shooting into the sun, now you're seeing a little bit of lens flare here. When you do this in photo mode, there's virtually no lens flare. It's sort of unbelievable. But again, just kind of a before. I mean, it's neat, but you could just see like you're just thinking to yourself, oh yeah, that's what compressed video looks like. Sort of bluish cyan into just white distortion, right? It's just all gone, okay? And go back to turning this on with just like 2 tweaks, and suddenly, you know, we've got blue sky and color and the sun, you know, which is more shocking. But I started saying, I've been playing with the souped up 64 gig version, 4 terabyte SSD M1 MacBook Pro, and that system. So this system here, which is almost 5 years old, you can see we're dropping frames. It's struggling a little on this, on just a clip of this HDR content. On the M1 MacBook Pro, it's astonishing. It is astonishing how incredible the performance is. And I can tell you personally, and maybe I'll show this even next week's stream, 9 streams of 4K HDR, all in a single sequence, in a 4K sequence, all playing simultaneously, didn't drop a single frame. Now, am I editing 9 simultaneous streams playing like that? No. Was there any tons of effects on there? No, this was just straight clips in the timeline playing back. The point is, it does it. It was unreal. That M1 Mac it's pretty darned incredible. Yes, Tim, 9. Yes. J.J. Abrams, lens flare. Yes, Reverb Mike. Anybody who's watched any of his shows, not light on the lens flare. Particularly in those Star Trek remakes, which I really liked. Okay. Michael Vandal, so you're asking about Motu interfaces? Like an M4, any special settings that can think about in order to avoid delays, outages? Yeah, so this is good because this kind of segues into an audio question that I have, and I see Suraj is asking some Audition questions as well. How to get Dolby quality audio output from Premiere Audition. All right, so I'm just seeing if there's any more audio ones here. Okay, so let's take both of these and a third one. So first, to answer Michael with regard to using external audio devices. So if we go into our preferences now, once again, this has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. I've been very vocal about this. It hasn't changed, so, you know, whatever. When you go into audio hardware preferences, so this is where you set your audio hardware device. Now, on the Mac, you only have one choice here, Core Audio. If you're working in Windows, you'll see things like ASIO for your device class, right? That's your driver class. I think you still see WDM, maybe. MME, that's so old. I don't know if those are still in there. You know, you want ASIO. That's going to be your lowest latency driver option. So Michael, I don't know if you're on Mac or Windows. Mac, it's not a big deal. There is no choice. Windows, though, you always want to use ASIO as your driver device. If your sound device, for some reason, doesn't have an ASIO driver, it must be very old, because ASIO is already old. So, and there's nothing new beyond that, to my understanding, that has any lower latency on the Windows side. So you want to be using an ASIO driver. Now, the other component to this, in terms of, and I see you're asking about, outages. So in general, you typically want to make sure that your input and output device, what is this? Yes, I want to continue. Stop showing me this. Your input and output device should be the same. Now, Audition does allow you to set these independently. And there are sometimes reasons for doing that. But in recording, you do not want that, because you're very likely to incur either some kind of weird additional delay, possible dropped samples, and just possible problems later in your production. So you want to typically make sure that you're always using the same input and output device. Again, even though we allow you to set them independently, particularly for recording. For playback, it doesn't really matter. So you could have your input device as a USB mic and your output as your Motu, or in my case, the Focusrite. That doesn't matter if we're just playing back. You may occasionally get dropouts and things. There may be some momentary sample rate blarfs, but it's more crucial to have them the same when you're recording. Similarly, your clock setting, now that's going to be automatic here. Sometimes it lets you choose input or output. Generally, I'll tell people, again, based on particularly if you're recording, you want the input clock. But in this case, the last setting that is really crucial here is the buffer size. Now, again, on the Mac, this is displayed in samples. On Windows, this is displayed in milliseconds. All right. In theory, you want the smallest buffer size possible, right? Because the smaller the buffer, the quicker the sound goes into the machine and back out to you through the sound device, so there's virtually no latency. The problem is that if you go too fast, 64, 32, 16, you will very likely get some dropouts, some clicks, some pops, and this happens whether you're playing back or recording. So if you are playing back, I'll try this. Let's leave it at the default. Giving you a full explanation of this, Michael. Also known as eating time. All right. So let me set this momentarily. I'm going to try 16. I've never even bothered to do that. All right. So 16 samples. This is insanely low. Now, remember, if you're trying to convert that to milliseconds, it's fractional because there are 48,000 samples per second. So do math, whatever 16 is, it's ridiculously low. I'm guessing within the second I hit play, down here, you're going to see a little blue piece of text come up, drop samples, or this is just going to click and pop, or maybe not even play. Let's see. Yeah, right away. Okay. Now, surprisingly, it's actually playing back without chunking. I'm curious, actually. Huh, it's actually playing back. Sometimes you get lucky. Very unlikely that 16 is going to work for recording, or ever. I've never actually had that work. So, I mean, it's great. Awesome. Very doubtful that's going to work for you in real life. So typically, I think the default is 512. Now that's just too long. And what'll happen is if you're monitoring yourself through the software, and by that I mean you have let's say we set this. We don't have a device selected here. Why is this? Yeah, we don't. How did this all get changed? Ugh. If you have record enabled and then you're monitoring through the software, that's what this input monitor I stands for here. If you were to monitor yourself there, you're going to hear a very at 512, it's not even a slapback. It's probably going to be pretty pronounced. Yes. No. I mean, it's maybe a little faster than that. That's not quite 512 samples. You're not going to want that. For playback, if you got a really complex session with a lot of effects and things, that's okay. But for recording, that's not going to work. So typically, if your machine can handle it, if you do 128 samples, or again, the sort of equivalent lowest LCD, lowest common denominator on the Windows side, you want, no dropouts, no skipping, and smooth playback and recording. You're going to have to find where that is based on the kind of machine you're working with. So for me, 128 typically does that. And when I monitor in headphones, it might be slightly phased or chorusy sounding, right? So because in practice, there's probably, a 29 or 32 millisecond delay, which kind of creates almost a chorus. It's probably even a little shorter than that. So it sounds kind of chorusy, but it doesn't throw me off when I'm singing necessarily. And if I monitor directly through the device, it's zero latency monitoring, but the difference is if I monitor through the software, you're going to hear that little weird thing. So it's a combination of making sure input and output are the same for recording, right? Making sure your clock is whatever that device is, and then the lowest buffer size possible, but playback first. If you start seeing that dropped samples, even if it sounds fine, but you're seeing dropped samples, raise the buffer, because it'll hurt you later. And if you're recording, you can have dropouts, you can have all kinds of problems. This is every DAW, by the way. You just have, there's no exact, and that's why we default to 512, because that's fairly slow. That's gonna work even with an onboard native sound device on a laptop that's 7 years old. You wanna go as low as you can, all right? Okay, so second question before we get to Suraj about Dolby was how to import audio files that are maybe older or not supported, or it's not a standard audio file type anymore. So this is actually a great question, because I'm in the process of working on putting together a collection of original Wendell drum samples. I don't know if you're in the chats and you're familiar with what Wendell is. Wendell was theoretically the first digital drum replacement computer, which became more than that, and this predates the Linn drum and everything else, developed by my good friend and mentor, Roger Nichols, 9-time Grammy winner. Roger Nichols, engineer of all of Steely Dan's records. And 1978, he created this Wendell computer to do sample replacement of drum sounds for what became Steely Dan's 1980 record Gaucho, as well as Donald Fagen's The Nightfly. Now, 1980, late 70s, to capture, first of all, to even capture in 16-bit was a process. But the issue really were sample rates. Digital capture was still pretty limited. Well, Roger somehow figured out how to capture, and I think the original samples were actually 12-bit, but he was capturing them at extremely high sample rates, 50 kilohertz and above. And by early 82, 83, I think, I have to look back at my history here, he was even capturing 16-bit, but at 100 kilohertz. Now you have to remember, this is, at this time, 44.1 and 48K were it. There was no 96K yet. That didn't come until the mid-90s. None of that existed. It wasn't even a thing. But Roger, being the immortal and being amazing, he figured out a way to do this. So I'm now going through all these I have access to all of his old samples. Now there's a sample company out there called Samples from Mars, and they have a Wendell collection, and it's okay, but they don't have the originals, and I do. So I'm doing this in conjunction with Roger's family, which is amazing. My point is that these files were redigitized in 2006. Now they're Sound Designer 2 files. Now, I have Pro Tools installed because I like to test in Pro Tools occasionally. Not a fan of the app. And I just tried, oh cool, Sound Designer, these should go right in. They don't. Because the format of these, 2006, different byte order and how we assigned to Sound Designer and Wave and PCM files. And again, you need to know, I don't know exactly what sample rate they were recorded at or saved at. And Pro Tools didn't know what to do with them. I couldn't open them at all. So here is how you're able to open any type of audio file in Audition, but there's a couple of caveats. So from the file menu, you're going to go into Import, and you're going to go into Raw Data, okay? So I'm going to navigate here, and it's got me right into my Wendell folders here. Now, you'll see that the Mac OS still recognizes these as Sound Designer 2 audio files. Oh, and weird, it's actually not, it's not showing at the moment the original, it says 95. These were not made in 95. These were all made in 2006. I don't know why these all have the same, that's weird. Anyway, I guess technically these could have been 95, now that I say that. These could have been, maybe some of the later ones. Maybe these weren't even re-encoded. I'm just talking to myself, don't mind me. Okay, so let's choose one, all right? So I'm gonna choose this Dave Light Crash. Initially, I thought this might be that he captured Dave Weckl. I'm forgetting, I think it's Dave Frangioni, but let's go ahead and click open. Now, when you do that, what happens is, because we're opening it as raw data, right? It's gonna ask you, well, what's the sample rate? How many channels? How is it encoded? What's the bit depth? And then most importantly, what's the byte order, okay? Now, if you've not been doing digital audio for a long time, you've never encountered, you're seeing here, you're like, what is that? Little endian, big endian. This just has to do with byte order, and you can see little endian is the old school, or I should rather say new school Intel byte order. Big endian was the PowerPC byte order. But I hadn't even, when I first tried to open this sample, I wasn't even thinking about that at first. So I'm like, okay, I know these are 16-bit. All right. And by the way, if you'll see, there's all different options here. So you need to know the attributes of the media. This is the challenge. Now, unfortunately, even in macOS Get Info, it didn't tell me the sample. It didn't tell me anything because it knows the file type, but for whatever reason, the metadata header, it can't see that in whatever OS I'm in now, the Big Sur or whatever, Mojave. So you got to guess. So I was like, okay, well, I know it's 16-bit. Now I'm thinking maybe these are mono. This is like 1980, 82. It's probably mono. And let's try 48K. Let's just see. I know he recorded these at 50K. You don't have a random option. Can we even type in an option? Does it let you do it? It actually does. And I may have tried that too. Let's not go there because that's, again, most of you are never going to have to do that. Come back to that. 48K, mono, encoding, byte order, little endian, click OK. And I open it right away. I'm going, okay, that can't be right. Now, before I even played it back, and I will play this for you. Don't worry, those in headphones, I will drop the amplitude before we listen. So, right away I'm going, okay, it's 5 decibels over 0. I've got 600 clip samples. There is no way, there's DC offset, no way that Roger Nichols encoded something this way. Not a chance. Okay. Now, just for curiosity, I dropped the amplitude. Okay. And again, even if I'm not an audio person, I'm looking at that. This is supposed to be a crash cymbal. No way a crash cymbal has like this area is wrong. And typically the reason you'll see something like that, or you might see transient peak distortion, is because you have the byte order done incorrectly. So I kind of guessed that right away. If you were to look at this spectrally, yeah, I mean, this looks like a bunch of digital mess. Now, this part might be okay. You can kind of hear the remnants of cymbal in there. All right. It's pretty low amplitude for the stream, I realize. But this at the beginning, just play, let me drop it even more so I don't want to hurt anybody's ears. We're at like minus 17. All right. All right, totally wrong. So let's close that. File import raw. Okay. So let's go back to, what was that? Light Crash 12, open. Okay. So first of all, let's just keep it at 48K for a sec. I'll come back because again, we're going to use our ears to help us with this. Okay. I just gave you a little trick. If you try and bring in something you're not sure of the byte order, first of all, think about when was this encoded? 95 for sure. It's going to be big endian. 2006, still big endian, most likely. PowerPC. That was the Mac I had, and I know Roger used Macs. So let's change it to that, and let's leave the rest the same. 48K, 1 channel, 16-bit, big endian. Click OK. What? All right, now let's amplify this. Okay. Now, without even listening, this actually looks like a pretty healthy waveform. It looks okay. Do we dare play it back? Okay. No distortion. I can actually hear the sticks. But what's wrong with it? Right? The sample rate's wrong. Sounds about half speed. So that tells us it's not 48K, it's 96K. And if I take a look at this spectrally, this is telling me I think this is actually a stereo file. So let's close it one more time. Let's go ahead and import, raw 12. Let's do 96. Let's try stereo. I'm guessing here. Keep it big endian. Click OK. And look at that. It is in fact stereo. Left and right slightly different, as they should be. Spectrally now, this looks awesome. Let's take a listen. What? Crystal. Crystal freaking clear. Actually sounds more like a splash than a light crash. It's a terrible sounding crash cymbal. But that's it, right? And what's amazing, I want to point this out to you. Again, this was captured so long ago. Look at how much detail. So remember, we're at 96K, so the Nyquist limit is 48K. We're capturing, we're presenting frequencies that you can hear up, well, you can't hear them, but up to 48 kilohertz, half of the sample rate. Look at all the data that's up there. Look at all of it in this sample that's there. I mean, it's well above even 26, 27, 28K. And this was captured long before you were really even able to do this stuff easily. Amazing. And by the way, I analyzed some of these samples against some of the already commercially available ones, and they don't have all that data there. I'm not knocking them. They're good samples, good company, good guys, whatever. But these are the originals. It's unbelievable. All right. So, and then just case in point here, if we just go ahead and open up another one, I'm trying to find something interesting. Let's try one of these ride symbols. And now we know it, 96 to 16-bit, okay. All right, let's take a listen. Again, these are symbols, so they're all lower amplitude naturally by design. I'm making them louder so you can hear them on stream. All right, take a listen. Ooh. Ping, a ping ride. Beautiful, all right. Very, very cool. Okay, so that's importing raw data when it's an old school file format. Now, by the way, if you were to go to save, you'll notice that those file types, now we still do listed here, SD2. This is what it's using the encoder and the decoder known as library sound file. So this includes a lot of those kind of esoteric, FLAC we actually have natively, but CAF, IFF, MPC, OGG. I think we still have OGG in here, don't we? Yeah, we do have a native OGG. RF64, really old school. SD2, SDS, .vox. All right, and again, this is not like standard wave. This is another flavor of not PCM wave, but something else. I've never heard of .g, but okay. Anyway, you could export back into those formats, or for, current modern backward compatibility, just export it out as PCM wave. And now it's going to work and play in any DAW everywhere and be preserved forever, which is how, of course, we'll be presenting these samples when they eventually get re-released. So resave into a modern format. But the key is, if you know the attributes, it's very easy to use the raw import feature. If you don't know them, it takes a little bit of playing around. One of the major keys, if you're seeing or hearing distortion or what I showed you, make sure to adjust that byte order. Chances are that right away will tell you, that'll get rid of the distortion, and then it's about finding that right sample rate and the channelization too. Sometimes Get Info shows the channels, sometimes not. I don't know why it's inconsistent, but something to think about. Okay, last thing. So now I don't really have anything to show here, Suraj. You've been patient. You're asking about sort of Dolby quality audio from Premiere Audition. Now listen, we do not longer have native Dolby export in Premiere or Audition. We used to. So if you want to go to something like, you know, Dolby Digital or Dolby Atmos for whatever reason, you'd have to actually buy a license from them and then take either your stereo master from Audition or Premiere or your multi-channel master from Audition or Premiere and then encode it in the separate Dolby software. So we used to have a direct export for that. We do not anymore. You'd have to go third party on that one. Okay. Ashton Heelan's asking, I've had a question. I have been sitting on them for a while. Is there a way to view your multi-track within Premiere? Well, that's a good question. So, you know, Premiere doesn't technically have, hold on a minute, let me open up a, let me see if I have another project I can just open that has something bigger in here. That doesn't have any. Premiere doesn't technically have a multi-track per se because your track view is always this. So you always have your combination of audio tracks and video tracks, which I've just made full screen here with this divider so you can kind of move up or down. If you're talking about the mixer itself, the track mixer, and again, we have two mixers, right? We have the clip mixer, which allows you to adjust individual clip amplitude in the timeline. I never use the clip mixer, ever. You can also add effects on the clip and then, you know, work and automate on the clip itself. I never use this because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be using the track mixer. And then this functions very similarly to Audition's mixing environment. The only difference being that if you want to show your effects, inserts, and sends, you've got to twirl down this little icon over here. But then this essentially functions just like Audition, where you have your effects inserts up at the top. So all of your native effects, including any third-party AU on Mac or VSTs that you may have installed. You've got your effects sends. So this is if you're wanting to create any submixes or bussing. Again, we use slightly different nomenclature in Premiere and Audition. Same concept here, though. You're trying to create a bust submix of all vocals, or maybe you're creating 3 buses for dialogue, music, and sound effects, or a 4th for ambient sound or whatever, or Foley. This is where you do that. And it follows the signal chain follows from top to bottom, right? So the signal begins here. Now we don't, again, unlike Audition's mixer, because it's an audio mixer, where you have options here, right, for flipping phase right at the top, and then your input and output and some of these other things. You don't have all of that on the Premiere side, but you've essentially got everything else. What is wrong with me? All right, including your mix automation, your pan here, mix automation here, mute, solo, record, and your fader volume, label. That's it. All right. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, Ashton, but that's the extent of what you can do. There is no theoretical multi-track in Premiere. Now, if you want to take all of the audio that you've assembled in Premiere and mix it in Audition, and then use Audition's multi-track, and then you can even send it all back to Premiere, that can be done simply by going to the Edit menu, Edit in Adobe Audition, Sequence, right? So you can send the whole sequence with any existing mix that you've created to Audition from Premiere. And then you got a couple of options here, right? So you can choose the entire sequence or just the work area. You can choose to non-destructively send basically a flattened version of all the video tracks to Audition as just one solid track of video. So if you've got, you know, titles and other things coming in there, you'll be able to see it without having to render, which is very nice. If you want to create just a rendered preview video, obviously when you do it through Dynamic Link, there's a little bit of slightly more of an overhead. So you can do it that way. That's how I do it. Again, I don't really run into too many problems, but I could see if you had a really complex timeline, you might want to export a video just because it's just going to make life a little easier, right? Because it's not going to it's not having to play back, say, 6 tracks of 4K HDR with titles and After Effects stuff going into Audition so that you can see it so you can do ADR. Sometimes it's better to create a preview video or none. You can add audio handles if you so desire. You can transfer any clip effects, track effects, right? Remove all, add all, including all pan and volume stuff that you've done in Premiere. So if you've done any keyframing of pan and volume, you can do all that. It gets sent to Audition and it works wonderfully. And then once in Audition, if you're ready to send it all back, you can choose to export back to Premiere Pro, okay? Whoops. And then once you do that, you can choose, do you want to do you want to export stems, which in this case would take every track here. Now again, it came from Premiere maybe in pieces. It's going to export the whole track as one continuous piece of audio. So it's not sending back individual clips. It's creating new mixes of each track for you. Each bus is a stem, or you can send a mixed or interleaved version. So to Suraj's point, if you were working in 5.1, this is your master mix. So you have 30 tracks of audio, but you're wanting to send back to Premiere an interleaved surround sound mix. You can create the surround sound mix right here. And once it sends it over to Premiere, it'll be one 6-channel audio file, okay? WAV file. So you've got a lot of options here for doing stuff like that, okay? Each port. Nice. All right. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, Tim is saying G is a format from the old tracker music makers. Not sure how Audition would even deal with that kind of data. Yeah, I don't know. Again, some of those formats that you're seeing in there, they're part of lib sound file. So I don't know how we interpret them at all. Again, I'd be curious to see. All right. All right. All right, let's see. Okay, Mustafa is saying, exporting from Premiere Pro or Media Encoder in H.264 and playing it in QuickTime Player, audio drifts out of sync. Playing in VLC, no issues. Spoke to the folks at Apple, they say it's an Adobe issue. Spoke to the folks at Adobe, they say it's an Apple QuickTime issue. Classic, they said. Okay, well, I don't have a direct answer for you there. A couple of questions. So the content that you're working with, is it H.264? Is it some flavor of QuickTime? And most importantly, is it variable frame rate? Now, if it is, so I'm going to do a little properties on here. If it is, it would tell you here inside of properties if it's VFR. And if it is, now this footage is not. If it is variable frame rate, what you do is you want to make sure that in effects, controls, so, and again, this is not VFR content, so I can't show you here, but inside of your effects controls, you may never have noticed, but you actually have 2 tabs for your media, okay? And one of them is, the default tab is sort of the clip instance, but then you also have the source instance. And the reason for having these 2 tabs is you can set certain attributes on the source side, because maybe you're going to use this clip in multiple locations, but you're going to treat parts of it. You want certain things to be uniform. Like, I want to make sure that it knows this is VFR, variable frame rate, so that it automatically syncs the audio correctly. But maybe I want to use different color settings when this exists in my timeline in different places. So that's why you have these 2 tabs. So if it is VFR, under source, check there, and then there's a drop down and it'll say, detected as variable frame rate, MPEG, whatever video. And there's 2 options, I think. One is, maintain audio sync, and the other is don't, or something like that. You just want to make sure that those are enabled first and foremost. That's one thing. Also, sometimes I've seen now if you're using the QuickTime H.264 exporter in Media Encoder, And this is where things can sometimes get a little confusing because, right, there's our native H.264 exporter, which I believe we still license from a company called Main Concept, right? If you're exporting H.264, this is what I recommend using. All right. Now, you can go to QuickTime, and then under Video for codec, you can choose. Is it still here? It should be. Is there H.264 now? Oh, it's not even in here anymore. Really? At all? Huh, I guess we took it out. What version? I guess maybe you're not using it then. It's not there. Okay. Apple has their own H.264 export. And from there, I can tell you from past experience, yes, I've run into certain issues with that. Also, frankly, some quality issues. That codec that they're using for H.264 in the old QuickTime wrapper, it just wasn't my favorite. So again, I would probably vote for using it natively. Curious, Mustafa, which one you're actually using. All right. Anyone's saying, okay. Okay, hasn't answered yet. All right, so you let me know. But those are some things to check out, okay? You know, being someone who exports H.264 pretty much daily, and again, I know the footage I'm working with. I've not encountered that in a really long time. I did used to encounter it, again, if I used the QuickTime H.264 sometimes, or it was VFR and I didn't know it, and I didn't enable that audio sync feature, and then stuff was just out of sync over time, like it drifted over time. So I'm thinking it sounds like a VFR issue. Okay. Okay. Misty's asking, I was recording a voice track to put into a presentation using a Samson Q1U mic. When I play it back, it only comes in on the left speaker instead of both. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Yeah, so this is really common if you're using particularly USB microphones. And this, I have a video on this on my YouTube channel, Jason Levine Video, how to record your voice in Audition. The same applies in Premiere. So you may have seen, so now in the case of this Thunderbolt, all right, you have, this is a 20 input device. When you're recording, you have input 1, input 2, right? And most multi-channel devices and most softwares want to see things as 2-channel. Now that doesn't mean they don't work in mono, it's just that most defaults are to see things in stereo. I'm going to use the word stereo. It doesn't necessarily mean it's independent content in left and right. They'll see it as dual channel, okay? The thing is with a lot of USB microphones, the driver detects that as just single channel audio, right? So you just have a single, which makes sense. It's one voice, it is one channel, it is mono. People ask me that all the time. Should I record my Samson in stereo and have the same content in left and right, or just have a mono track? And traditionally I used to say, well, it depends where it's going and what you're doing with it. For me, if it's a mono signal, like this mic here, mono signal, single track audio. And in Audition, it's really simple to understand what's happening. But there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. So first of all, if you're going to be recording something like your Samson, in both Premiere Audition, I don't know where you were recording this, Misty, you want to make sure that the track you're recording into is in fact a mono audio track, because then it's guaranteed to play back in both channels, all right? If you record in Premiere, so let me make a mono audio track here, okay? And I'll do this with this mic right here. So I'm going to give you kind of an example, all right? So I have a mono audio track set up here, okay? Now you see, even the default is stereo, okay? But this is single channel. Now this happens to be an input 5, all right? So I'm going to set a mono input to record this, okay? And if I do that, let's just record real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? Zoom in here. You can see I've got mono audio, and if I play this for you, let's solo it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's playing in both channels, right? Now, if you recorded this in Premiere with that Samson as a stereo file, you probably only got audio on the left side because it's only a single track of audio. And some devices will actually automatically populate into stereo. Most don't. Most see it as a mono driver. So if you've already recorded it as a stereo file, kind of need to know how you did it here, all right? If you have only audio on the left side or only audio on the right side, there is an easy fix for that, all right? Do I have any audio in here at all? All right, let's do audio. Let me get some mono. Let me get some mono audio here real quick. Actually, it doesn't matter. I can still do the same thing. In your mixer, so remember I just showed you, again, I don't know if you're in Audition or Premiere. I kind of just showed you on the Audition side what to do. By the way, the same effect works in both. In the Premiere mixer, we're going to twirl down our effects inserts. We're going to go into amplitude and compression. Channel mixer. All right. Double click on channel mixer. And in the channel mixer, there's an option to fill the left with the right. So remember, we're always thinking left and right when we think of stereo audio. Left side, right side, channel 1, channel 2. Even though you can do stuff in mono, DAWs, and they always think in pairs, all right? So if you have audio in channel 1 and you want it to be in channel 2, you're going to fill the right with the left, right? It's a non-destructive process. You don't need to do anything, and it's just going to work for you, all right? So you don't have to re-record. You don't have to do anything like that. Same thing on the Audition side. All right. In fact, here, let me see if that, I'm curious. Let me see. I should be able to do this for you, and it should work exactly as I expect. So now I'm recording. I'm trying to simulate your situation here. So I'm recording into a stereo file, all right, using the pair 5 and 6, all right? I don't think I have any mics connected in input 6, so this should work. All right. 1, 2. Oh, it's not even letting me record a stereo file here because I'm in a mono track. I have to go into a stereo track. For heaven's sake. All right, let's do this. Is Audition that smart? Really? I'm impressed. Okay, stereo track. All right, you can even see it on the meters, right? You're only seeing audio in the one channel because there's nothing connected over there. Let's solo this. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. This is probably what our customer is experiencing, okay? So there it is. And as I play this back, I don't really need to, but you can see visually. All right, thank you. Wonderful. Now, by the way, I just realized here, in fact, if I have noise reduction on here, so you're not going to hear it in stereo anyway. Let me remove this for you real quickly. Hopefully that doesn't mess up my sync. All right. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. This is probably what our customer is experiencing. Okay, so are you hearing that? You should only hear it on the left. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. This is probably what our customer is experiencing. Effects, amplitude and compression, channel mixer, same thing that we just saw in Premiere. Fill right with left. Play. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. This is probably, what? Oh, it's turned off. I was just about to have an aneurysm there. Here we go. All right, thank you. Why? Oh, because it's on automation. Oh, why? Meh. Oh, God. That won't happen to you, by the way. I don't know why that went into touch mode. That was weird. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. This is probably what our customer is Could that have taken any longer? Nah. I promise you, it'll just work when you do it. Okay, channel mixer, fill right with left. You can see there's only audio on one side, but now, all right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. Versus if we turn it off. All right, thank you. Wonderful, this is great. Okay. Okay, Ryan Weir. After bringing Mixdown from Audition back into Premiere and saving the file, can you easily edit the audio again if a client has a change? So that's a great question, Ryan. So yeah, so if you were implementing the export back to Premiere process, here's what would happen. So you're in Premiere. In fact, here, I can just do this real quickly. All right, I'm gonna mute that. I'm just gonna do here, let me see how much time we have. Oh, we're almost out of time. Oh, I don't have time to do it. Okay. What you would do is, once you have the mix back in Premiere, you're going to edit the clip in Audition, right? It will ask you, do you want to open up the multi-track session that created it? You then remix, resend back to Premiere, and that's how you do it. So you have to go back to Audition, to the master, make your change, and then re-export. And that's how that works. But friends, we're out of time. Because just like that, we're done. So thanks for the questions. It was really good, great stuff. Thank you. Misty, okay, you used Audition. All right, great, perfect. So now you know how to do it. Fill, channel mixer, fill right with left. Lots more, of course, that we could talk about. Next week will be our last stream of the year. And I'm probably going to be bringing on some friends from another part of Adobe, the sign team. You think, oh, I'm an independent contractor. I sign contracts all the time. Well, what if I told you that one, you could be generating your own contracts. Two, you could also, you also have a really easy ability to use Adobe Sign to create, signatures and do all sorts of things for contracts that you need to sign and verify. And it's really easy. It's a mobile app. It ties directly into Document Cloud. Again, it's part of the Adobe family of apps, and it works really, really well. So the plan is to have some friends of mine from the Sign team. And until then, have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. The DCC is up next.